Hey everybody, this is Dave with Full Armor Gaming, and I'm coming to you guys again with another video in my How to DM, but today we are going to be covering something a little bit different. We have been talking this whole time about how to build community and how to build, community around your table and all that kind of stuff, but today we are going to be tackling how to take D&D and use it in your own family. So we're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff, from young kids to teenagers and all that kind of stuff, even extended family. And we're going to see all the benefits and ways you can take D&D and make it work for you and your family. So let's see what we got. Okay, so you have committed to D&D in your own life, and it's time to take your passion, take your love for D&D, and move it to your kids, your wife, your kids, your husband, your whatever, or maybe even extended family like nieces and nephews and all that kind of stuff. So today we're going to cover a couple things and how to do that to make the process a little bit easier for you to tackle. So the number one thing that I want to make sure that we address when it comes to introducing your family into D&D is what the most important rule is. The most important rule is fun. This needs to be fun for everybody at the table, yourself included. This is not a, I would steer clear of making a family D&D a heavy subject, a heavy campaign. It should definitely be a lot more lighthearted, especially if you're gonna do, I have younger kids. All of them are in elementary school. I'm not going to be running a campaign that involves murder and going and wiping out whole hordes of stuff like that. That's just subject matter that doesn't really need to be introduced super young, but that doesn't mean that they can't play D&D. What it means is we're going to be doing a different part of D&D. Like I said, the number one thing we need to make sure is that this is fun. I want my wife and my kids to have fun with this so that they want to keep doing it. And this is a great source of family time. In a world that can be so caught up in screens and distractions and games and on all that kind of stuff, things that just kind of almost seem to keep you apart, D&D can be such a huge thing to get your whole family to sit around a table for an extended period of time and have fun together. Any of us that have played D&D, we know that whoever you play with, you share stories with, and stories that you remember. So why not have that with your family? So let's get into this. So the first thing that I like to make sure that my kids and my wife have if we do a family D&D session is freedom. I tend to not have a ton of stuff planned out because you just never know where your kids are going to go, especially if you have elementary kids. You never know where their mind's at in any given day. So I want to make sure that they have the freedom to kind of go and do anything that they really want to do. So that would be my first point would definitely be making sure that your table, your kids and your wife or your husband or whoever have the freedom to go with what they want to do, especially if they're new to D&D. For those of us that have played for a long time, we kind of already have programmed in our head, we need to do this, and then we need to go do that. We need to go find quests. We need to go, and it could just be your kids want to go and they want to find a local playground and they want to play on a D&D themed playground in the D&D world. So you have all kinds of stuff, and you have them do checks and stuff like that when they're trying to do the monkey bars, and based off their checks, they could be, super successful or not. They're learning the mechanics of the game and stuff like that. Second is imagination. This, in my opinion, D&D with your family, especially if you have young kids, is so good for you as an adult because it forces you to use your imagination in a very unique way that we don't tend to use it for as much in our day-to-day lives anymore. When you get kids' imagination rolling, there is no limit to where you might end up. Us as adults, we tend to try to put our own worldly limitations on our imagination, and kids just don't have that. So when you let your kid run loose with their freedom and their imagination, boy, where you might end up is just crazy. And making sure that you use that imagination to run alongside of them, to be able to keep up with them, it's really good for you. So making sure they have freedom, making sure that you're using your imagination to kind of follow their path that they go on is huge. The other thing that I love putting into my D&D campaigns with my kids is problem solving. Let them stretch that brain muscle. They're going and they're doing all these things, and you will be so surprised the routes that your kids take. As an example, it was essentially one between me and my son. I was DMing, he was the player, and then I also had a player character in there as well. And we were trying to get this mysterious gem back from these giant lords. And we end up finding the place, and we get down to the final chief giant, and he sits there and he has the gem, and every part of me is like, we are going to fight this guy to get this gem. My son went above and beyond to try to negotiate with this giant. I in no way, shape, or form ever thought he was going to go that route, but he did. And so we started rolling, and he started rolling really well. And so you could see his excitement to go that route really sparked and really took off. And so it's like, okay, my job then is to run along with that and help him as I'm the little player character that's playing alongside of him. I'm not going to try to, rail him towards combat and instigate a fight here. No, I see where he's going. I'm going to run alongside it. I'm going to partner with him in that. And so he ends up, based on his roles, negotiating with the giant to get the gem back. And it was extremely awesome watching him do it. And he was so proud of himself afterwards when he was walking out of there with the gem after already killing multiple giants to get to the final giant. He had combat on the mind, and he was playing a barbarian. But when it came down to that last giant, he understood that we were in a weakened state. He looked very strong. He wasn't sure if we could actually win. So he went with the route that he thought would be the best chance for them to walk out of there alive. I was so impressed with my, at that time, 9-year-old son picking that up. Let your kids have opportunities to stretch that brain muscle and see what they can do. And you never know what they're going to come up with. Sometimes you just go on trips that are just so cool that you yourself never even could have came up with. But ultimately, the main goal when we play D&D together is to build the family unit. I want to strengthen the party, and the party is my family. I want us to walk downstairs after playing D&D hyped up, happy. Everyone had a good time. Even sometimes if player characters die, they still walk downstairs being like, whoa, that was so cool. Oh, it was so neat how that happens. And oh man, I have noticed playing D&D that the stories that you share with other players in the game are memories that last a long time. And so for me, I don't understand why you wouldn't want to have that with your own wife and kids, or husband and kids, or whatever. D&D is such a good tool for imagination and storytelling. And how many kids don't love it when you just sit and tell them a story? Let them be part of making the story. Let you and your spouse be involved in their story making. It's an amazing thing. I really enjoy doing it. Now, a couple of my cautions towards it as well. Like I said earlier on, I would try to keep some of the really heavy subject matters if you're playing with younger kids. A lot of the more adult themes that can be in D&D, I would highly recommend steering clear from in Dungeons and Dragons. The other caution that I have is I like to give my kids a lot of freedom. My kids sometimes would like to role play out doing things in the game that they know they shouldn't do in real life. Now, this is where people might disagree with me. I let them do so, but I always make sure that there are consequences for those actions, and my kids get to play them out in real time. They get to see what happens. In a lot of the cities that my kids are in, they are not stronger than the guards. If they decide that they want to break a law, they can attempt to roll and stuff like that to get away with it. And maybe they don't get caught actually stealing the item. But eventually the shopkeep will realize that something is missing and piece it together who was the last person in here. And the guards come looking for them, and the guards come start asking them questions and stuff like that. And so I want my kids to if they do decide to play out those things in the game, I want them to see what natural consequences are. If you break the law in real life, natural consequences are maybe you might get away with it, but you're gonna be on the run. You won't ever feel comfortable in that city again because you never know if they're gonna catch you or not. Or you don't get away with it, and there's gonna be a whole nother set of consequences. I really because as a parent, sometimes it can feel very much of like you tell your kids, like, hey, don't do this because of this. And how many times as a parent you could be like, yeah, but they always try it anyway, just to see if that actually is what happens. D&D is a great way for, if they are really curious about something, that they can try it out and see what the real life consequences are without them actually making that mistake in real life. That's a personal opinion. There are a lot of people that may not agree with that. They may think that letting your kid role-playing out, breaking the law is a bad thing in general. The way I look at it is if my kid has a proclivity towards stealing, I would like them to understand what the real-life consequences are in a game sitting around my table than going and figuring it out in person. I really do believe that D&D is an amazing tool for education as well. So last point that I want to also make is that it can be so good for your kids that are kind of hitting that adolescent phase where they're trying to figure out who they really are. D&D, especially if your kids get into role-playing, is such a good avenue to try to figure out who they want to be. If you have a kid that is super self-conscious and they really wish they were more confident, encourage them in D&D to play a confident character. Let them, in the safety of your home, in the safety of the D&D table, role play out what it's like being confident. I think, and from my experience, you find that they start to learn that it's not as scary as they think it is. Now, I'm not saying that, just play a couple games as a confident character, and now boom, you're confident. But I can say that it can make it easier. So all of that to say that that's just an example. The benefits, in my opinion, of playing D&D with your kids in a controlled environment. I personally would not just turn loose my kids on D&D without any sort of supervision at all. Just because, if people start making those calls like, hey, I want to go do this or I want to do that, and it's like, hey, as a real life person, we should not be doing any of that. I want to be able to, as a parent, control the environment in a way of making sure that they know that there are consequences for those actions. You don't just get away with it type thing. So, and maybe that makes me a controlling parent. I don't care. And I want my kids to understand how the world actually works, not just in a game. And so D&D does afford me the opportunity to, in a very featherweight option, let them see what real world consequences are without them having to learn it in real life. So all that to say, I hope this has been helpful. I hope this has been like directive towards showing you that there can be a lot of benefits other than just fun, even though fun is our #1 goal, to playing D&D with your wife and your husband and your kids. So if you have other options or other things that you've done, I would love to hear them, because I really like playing with my kids, and I do tend to let my kids just kind of come up here and run their own little campaigns. We try to steer clear of a lot of stuff, and I'm always within earshot so I can hear if it's going a direction it doesn't need to go. But just letting your kids have those opportunities to use that imagination is just such a huge part of childhood and such a huge part of development as well. So I think it's just a huge benefit to them. But that's what I've got for this week. This is Dave with Full Armor Gaming, and I will see you guys in the next one.